Information fueled.
Opinion driven.
This is Nashville's Morning News with Dan Mandis.
And so, my fellow Americans,
We talk news.
506, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Are we ready for Snowmageddon?
Oh, yeah.
Are we ready for Snowmageddon?
Again.
Snowpocalypse. It's going to be a snowzaster is what it's going to be.
Is that a new one?
I tried. You know what?
Yeah.
If you don't swing for the fences, you're going to strike out on occasion, and I think that was a swing.
Just call it Snowmageddon 2.
It could be Snowmageddon 2.
There's always a sequel to the good one.
Now, here's the great thing, though, is, Joan and I are probably going to work from home tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm sleeping in. Joan, how about you?
Totally sleeping in.
Tomorrow, at this time, I'm going to be in my jammies.
And slippers. Yeah.
That's exactly right. I'll be drinking good coffee as opposed to the crappy, sludgy stuff that we have here at the radio station.
Yeah.
I make the coffee.
Have fun being here at the studio there, Jeff, KGB.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving right along. Did you see what happened to my house yesterday?
No.
Complete disaster. I'll talk about that at 5:35.
Okay.
All right. Let's talk about another what I believe is a complete disaster. That would be the Channel 5 reporting on the Republicans and Donald Trump. And here's, I want to play you some audio from last night. And this is Channel 5, Phil Williams. But I don't believe that they're being fair. And so I'm going to play some audio and I'm going to tell you where I don't believe that they're being fair. The headline is, do Republicans support cuts to life-saving medical research? Most members of Congress from Tennessee won't say. So this, of course, again, written by Phil Williams. And the premise of the article is that Republicans are running, and it was a report, running from the conversation that Donald Trump is, and I'm putting this in air quotes, okay, that Donald Trump is cutting funding for important medical research. And so, the folks are out there are saying, oh my God, he's cutting, cancer research for children and all of these other things. That's not necessarily true. So they found a letter. Phil Williams has a letter, and the letter was written by St. Jude's and Vanderbilt, among others, saying that they were going to lose millions in funding for medical research. This is what it sounded like.
This is the question, where do members of Congress stand on these proposed cuts to medical research that could seriously affect our community?
That's true.
Right. Okay, so it's actually not true. What Donald Trump did was he put a cap on indirect costs at 15%. Now, what is an indirect cost? An indirect cost is the stuff that's administrative in nature. In other words, Donald Trump did not cut the cost to research. He cut the indirect costs, which is, the cost to run facilities like building maintenance, utilities, interest on debt for building purchases. That's not necessarily tied for research. In other words, what the president did is he is going after what he perceives as it could be bloat. Indirect costs. That is so important. The way the Channel 5 introed the story.
This is the question, where do members of Congress stand on these proposed cuts to medical research that could seriously affect?
He didn't cut medical research. Now, I could be splitting hairs, but if you're going to try to take out Republicans and a president for saying that they are cutting medical research when they're actually going after indirect costs, which is something completely different, then I just think that you've got to be honest. They talk about indirect costs, equipment maintenance. That's obvious. But here's the deal, is that you need to look and see if the money that these research facilities are getting, like Vanderbilt and St. Jude, who do incredible work. But the question is, are they making good use of the grant money that they're getting from the federal government, or is it going to bloat and waste and high salaries? I mean, that's the whole point. So now, am I splitting hairs? Maybe, because you can say, and I know that this is what folks will say who are hyperventilating over this, what they'll say is, okay, but Dan, if they cap the cost on indirect costs at 15%, when we usually have those indirect costs funded at like 30%, well, then that 15% is going to have to come from research. That's what the answer will be. And so I'm not attacking Channel 5 per se. I'm saying that the way that they positioned this story, the premise, I don't believe, is actually very fair. Because they're saying that Trump is cutting research when he's not. He's funding indirect costs, which again are administrative in nature. Library services, which is access to medical journals and science journals and database and so forth. Again, we talked about administrative expenses for staff not directly tied to research. This is like human resources. This is accounting. This is general administration. That's where, you talk to people who know this stuff, and that's where a lot of this bloat is. So all of this, the proposed cuts that Donald Trump is talking about and Elon Musk and Doge is talking about, it all seems to be operational in nature, nothing directly tied to research. But again, the obvious answer to all of this is that you take away those general operation funds, then there is less money for the overall goal of research. But, Phil Williams was lamenting that the Republicans are not responding to him with an answer as to do they or do they not support these cuts to medical research. Listen to what he says about Senator Marsha Blackburn.
Now, credit to Senator Marsha Blackburn's office, which at least responded with a statement from a spokesperson saying, quote, the goal is to allow taxpayer dollars to go towards life-saving research, not inefficient administrative costs. Of course, that doesn't really answer the question, does she support these proposed cuts or doesn't she?
This is what is so surprising. It's, again, the incredibly unfair setup question. Yes or no, Senator, do you stand by these cuts made by President Trump or do you not? Well, no wonder nobody is answering your phone calls, your emails, Phil, and Channel 5. It's because the way that you frame it, the premise is completely unfair. And so she actually answered the appropriate way. Senator Blackburn answered appropriately. Because what Donald Trump and Elon Musk are trying to do is they're trying to find the waste involved in these grants. That's what they're trying to do. Where's the waste? Where's the bloat? I don't know about fraud, because I by and large respect these facilities, but then they do great work. And they do such great work that I want to see, and that's what Senator Blackburn was saying, I want to see these facilities streamlined so that more money goes to research, not less. I've got a solution for all of this, but here's more. But that yes or no question, and again, I believe that Marsha Blackburn did answer that perfectly. The money has to go to research, not wasteful spending.
Congressman Scott Desjardins, who is also a physician, told us, quote, taxpayer money should be spent transparently, efficiently, and judiciously. This does not need to be an either-or proposition. Both goals can be achieved.
See, Scott Desjardins is absolutely right. Two things need to happen and can happen at the same time. We can cut the administrative costs so that we understand and we know that taxpayer dollars going to these facilities is being spent wisely. And we can still keep the funding for research. And by the way, I would also point out that here's the solution, friends. The solution is that Doge and Elon Musk, they go into these facilities. They go into Vanderbilt, they go into St. Jude, and they start looking at the books, and they make sure that as much money as humanly possible is going to research, as opposed to bloated salaries or out-of-date programs and, duplicative jobs. If you've got, more than one person doing the same job, these kinds of things, that's what needs to happen. Now, what is the solution to all this? I've got it, actually, coming up. 5:17 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7. So Channel 5 does this big expose going after Republicans in Congress who refuse to answer Phil's question. Do they or do they not stand by Donald Trump in cutting medical research? And I've been explaining that what Trump is doing is he is putting a 15% cap on indirect cost, which is administrative. And so the reason why Republicans are not returning Phil's call is because of the way that they're framing this conversation. The framing of the conversation, according to Channel 5, is, do you support President Trump and Elon Musk cutting medical research that could save the lives of children? I could frame it in a completely different way. I believe that what Donald Trump is trying to do is he's trying to ensure that the money that is coming from the federal government into these various universities and research facilities is being used wisely so that more money goes to research. I mean, the accusations, and we've all seen the accusations. If you pay attention to people that pay attention to such things, bloated salaries, too many administrative costs, slush funds, and a lack of transparency. Those are the accusations. And here's the thing. We know that through DOGE, we have seen a lot of waste. We have seen a lot of fraud, and we've seen a lot of irresponsible spending. And so it is up to the federal government to make sure that that money is being utilized wisely because it is for the kids. It is for medical research. And so make sure that the money that we are spending on medical research is actually being used for medical research.
A response we got was from Democrat Steve Cohen over in Memphis. Quote, "This is not the kind of cost saving Americans want because it is sure to cause unnecessary harm." Congressman Cohen added, "I joined a chorus of medical research professionals in demanding that this short-sighted and dangerous policy be reversed immediately." So it's clear that Congressman Cohen opposes these cuts. How the others feel is less clear.
I mean, it really is a pretty easy question to answer, just so people know.
Absolutely. Just say one way or another.
A reminder, Cohen, the lone Democrat.
Exactly.
1 out of the 9. And hopefully we'll get responses from the others.
Well,
we're going to
well
keep
done.
asking.
I know you will.
Such unbiased reporting. And it's not a simple, and I don't know who I think one of those guys, Rory Marcus, I think is his name, and I don't know who the female is. But it's not an easy question to answer. And I think that is what really angers me about the way that this story is presented on Channel 5 is, number one, I mean, let's go right back to the first soundbite that I played.
This is the question, where do members of Congress stand on these proposed cuts to medical research that could seriously affect...
Donald Trump is not cutting medical research. He is cutting indirect costs, which is administrative. So they're just, in my opinion, they're not being fair in how this story is being presented. By the way, the Super Text line is open, 615-737-9986, 615-737-WWTN. By the way, I'm trying to get one of our esteemed members of Congress to come on the show this morning and talk about, the nuance of this story and how Channel 5 is presenting this story, which again, I don't want to be too unfair to Channel 5. I don't think that they're not being very fair in how they're reporting this. And clearly that the last cut that I played for you before the first cut that I played, they're basically taking out Republicans and saying it's an easy question to answer. Why the Republicans won't answer is, so on and so forth. And I think that the reason why Republicans aren't answering you is because of the way that you are framing the question. So if you watch us on YouTube, if you would, like us and follow us on YouTube and subscribe to it and tell your friends about us as well. You can take the Daily Dan poll. And I chose the Daily Dan poll way early this morning, so I will tell you, KGB, I don't even remember what the Daily Dan poll is this morning. What is it?
It is Elon Musk and Doge have found millions in Social Security benefits paid to long dead Americans. Is this incompetence or is this fraud?
Oh, is it incompetence or is it corruption? Maybe I want to change that. Do I want to change it to this whole cutting the funding to NIH and putting a cap on indirect costs?
So my phone going off at 1 a.m. when you sent this is just does it just off to the wayside now?
I think so. Why don't we change it to the monologue that I just did? Because I think that's a better question. Cuts to NIH. Do you support Donald Trump's cuts to, whatever it is, indirect? We'll figure out how to frame it as we go to the break, because I do think that that's a more relevant question since, of course, clearly I'm covering it this morning. Super text line is open, 615-737-9986, 615-737-WWTN. I think, Joan, that is, that's why young KGB gets so frustrated with yours truly.
Oh, that's just one of the many.
Is that just one of the many? Yeah. All right, fine.
I have a list at home I can send you.
Do you have a list at home? Mm-hmm. Very good. All right,
I don't even have time to do that.
Mm-hmm.